Now, let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Bad Boppy, and let's queer up politics. What does it hint for November 2026 elections? Trans was a key issue. Incumbent Omaha Republican Jean Stothert has lost re-election to Democrat John Ewing Jr. She began her term as mayor as a centrist, even creating an LGBTQ advisory board. As the most recent mayoral election continued, Stothert began to adopt the current GOP social talking points, accusing Ewing of wanting boys in girls' bathrooms and sports. These talking points may have helped Donald Trump in the area where he beat Kamala Harris by over 20% of the vote. Stothert had been popular with Omaha's Democrats in the past and won her 2021 re-election by 27 points. The recent adoption of anti-trans GOP talking points seemed to have cost her the election this time, as Ewing became the city's first black mayor and won with over 11,000 more votes. The transgender sports talking points are used frequently by Republicans, even though there are only about 10 transgender athletes in college sports, and Nebraska has its own transgender sports ban. Many suspect this election may indicate a turning point in public opinion as moderate Republican voters and independents become less enamored with buzzwords and more critical of action. I feel like every time I come to this news show, there's always a freaking story about how trans people shouldn't be in sports and how trans people shouldn't, use the bathroom that correlates to their gender. Like, this is just such a tired narrative of us. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wish that we were kind of over it because it's getting really...
But that's the point. The point is politician keeps harping these points in order to essentially gaslight the general population into believing that is happening, and also to make sure to beat down our activism until it's like, oh, well, you know what, I gave up. That's why we cannot give up. And every time someone, beat on our heads, we need to say, you can beat on our heads, I'm going to beat on your heads. The thing is, I don't know if the trans issue is a driving motivation for this mayoral election. The truth is, the majority of the country right now is extremely sour on Republicans. There's fear-mongering. The prices are not going down. Inflation is still going up.
We're in a pretty silent recession, I would say.
Exactly.
Honestly. Nobody's talking about it.
It's not that silent.
Yeah.
It's a very real Trump session. That's what we're seeing. I think there's two big things happening here. First, I think voters reminded us something. There's no such thing as a moderate Republican. That is a myth. They are all right-wingers. I don't trust it. I've never met a Republican that I could trust, and I will go to the day. I enjoy being mad at Democrats, but there are at least Democrats I can trust. I think I've met moderate or at least good Democrats. I've never had the same experience with Republicans. But on this specifically, I would say that I don't think this shows a change. I think this just reminds us all that Americans are less transphobic than people try to push it, especially when J.D. Vance tried to claim that there were all these white gays that are not
normal gays.
Yeah. And then I go look at the exit polls. 88% of the LGBTQ community voted for Harris and not for J.D. Vance and his friend. And I look at that and I remind people that the LGBT community, that was the 2.5 million more votes in 2024 for Harris than what Biden got from our community, which is a reminder that there are a lot of queer people out there that do not appreciate the attacks on our community like this. And the idea on trans sports, it could be 10 college kids or 10 million trans college kids in sports. Who cares? If you're worried about fairness, then ask questions like, should a 400-pound guy wrestle a 20-pound guy?
Exactly.
Not what your gender.
Exactly. Or their genital, your chromosomes, your what is it, testosterone?
Yeah, hormone levels.
I'm sorry, I don't think my chromosomes are going to make that much of a difference. I had a DNA test to prove that, though.
No, and to your point, I just feel a lot of these trans attackers or whatever, are just fear mongering to win these elections and stuff. And now that it's not working,
it is all fear mongering because most people don't know trans people. I mean, if you look at the general population, they either don't recognize it or they don't see it because it's not out there in their face. Every school doesn't have 100 trans children. I mean, they talk about there being only 10 trans athletes in whatever state we were just talking about. It isn't significant, but the idea of pinpointing that small marginalized community just raises the fear amongst the general population of something they don't know. And going back to what you said about like enough of the story, I get that because a lot of this seems like wash and repeat every time we're on the show, but it's almost like you have to, otherwise it's forgotten. It's not
no, absolutely.
And I know you know that, but it's just, it is like annoying to keep rehashing the same thing, but the truth is if we don't, then no one's going to talk about it. It's no longer an issue.
Because the thing is that like I literally deal with that every day of my life.
Right.
Every day of my life, I'm always like, okay, what bathroom do I use? Where do I go? Like when there's like a gender thing, do I use the men's changing room? Do I use the women's changing room? Like I'm always like, where do you put me?
And to be honest, like there's part of this fight is twofold. Of one, they talk about trans athletes to not talk about trans murders. It's a distraction to get us to not talk about the actual experiences that a trans person deals with. I remember when I was at Creating Change a few years ago, one of the speakers, she talked about how, she had to deal with kidney infections because she wasn't sure what bathroom to use. And, part of this is also how we as an LGBTQ community react to these stories. Something that I will always get upset with is there was a pro-trans ballot initiative or anti. It was a very weird Massachusetts ballot initiative, and the Alliance Defending Freedom, they were trying out a lot of crazy transphobic stuff. And math equality and the polite gays and the polite white people that run a lot of the LGBT groups, they didn't want to respond to any of that. We're going to be all high-minded. I'm like, if you allow these far-right fringe groups to say this now, they're going to take it all across the country.
Exactly. And that's what's happening.
What we've seen.
That's literally what's happening.
And thank you, Massachusetts.
And most of the people that are in the general population actually support trans rights. If you actually take like a population like count of like who like is actually like in support of like HRT, for example, they're completely fine with it. Like
HRT is done to cisgender, transgender,
yes, exactly,
every kind of gender person.
exactly.
I mean, if a man is taking testosterone shots because he is quote unquote low testosterone, you're literally doing gender conforming medical procedure.
Exactly.
But I want to go back to the point for Massachusetts because I'm very ashamed of you, Liberty Hotel in Boston. Where the security guard literally chased two cisgender lesbians into the women's bathroom, demand that they show her the IDs and practically their genitalia in order to prove that they are cis women. Liberty Hotel, a 4-star hotel in Boston with a security guard, and the hotel defended the security guard in the beginning until, wait, where are they again? Boston. Which is
allegedly
ridiculous.
blue state, how blue states are supposed to be so safe, and I always say don't think a blue state's safer than a red state.
Exactly. And the most of the time these persecutions happen to women of color because unfortunately femininity is based on white feminism, and they target women of color because they don't fit that mold that was created.
The majority of murder victims of the transgender people are trans women of color, which is a sad statistics. And for now, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer non-profit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.